What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of Touchline Talk right here on 110 Sports. We got plenty of soccer to talk about today, but first, I would like to congratulate Vancouver Whitecaps part owner Steve Nash on becoming the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Out of nowhere, very, very interesting development this morning. Of course, we're not going to talk too much about it here because this is a soccer show, but we will have some reaction on the 110 Sports platform. We'll talk about it on the Jays for Days podcast that we're going to record today. It'll be in my 5 things from the week, most likely. So there will be Steve Nash content coming your way. I didn't want to ignore it because there is a soccer connection. Nash is a huge soccer fan. He's invested in the Vancouver Whitecaps. And it's the news of the day. So congratulations, Steve Nash. Very interesting things happening in Brooklyn. Interesting developments happening in Barcelona as well. Since we've last talked about Lionel Messi, his father has gone to speak with Bartomeu and whoever else at Barcelona. Apparently now there's a chance Messi stays. And it sounds like the next 24 hours or so might go a long way in determining whether that happens or not. I said from the beginning when that Bureau fax went through and Messi said he wanted out, that I'm not jumping to the conclusion that Messi was gone. And I still refuse to do that. This doesn't sway me much one way or the other. I think there's a good chance he leaves, but I would not be shocked if he stays. I would put Barcelona second behind Manchester City. I would do that a little more confidently now, but I'm still in a spot where I'm not going to move one way or another on this. I'm not going to jump and think he's gone or all of a sudden swing back and think he stays. This is a fluid situation. I don't think he wants to leave in a vacuum. If he can find a way to make this work, that's his goal. It's just, can you find a way to make this work with the mess Barcelona is right now? Other things that have happened here since we last talked Messi is that La Liga has sided with Barcelona in agreeing that this contentious clause in his contract allowing him to leave at the end of the season for free is not applicable in this scenario. So whoever's going to pay him is theoretically on the hook for that $700 million release clause. Now, of course, you could negotiate a transfer fee where you're not paying the release clause, and Barcelona agrees to let him go because you can only do so much if Messi doesn't want to play for your team anymore. But it's another sort of leverage that Barcelona now has, that they can dictate the terms of this. Now, Messi obviously controls it even to a greater extent because he can just say, I'm not playing for you, which is basically what he's done in this past week or so, just not showing up to stuff and acting like he's not a Barcelona player. But he can't just leave. And so that opens the door to more conversations. You got reports saying he might stay. His father saying it's a possibility he might stay. This is very tenuous. I don't have much to react to here because I'm in the same spot I was before. I'm going to follow this stuff closely because it's Messi and it's a huge deal. But I never thought this was done and dusted. He said he was gone, so he's gone. Messi does sometimes, for better or worse, sort of react emotionally in the heat of the moment. You saw him retire from the Argentinian national team, and then he came back very quickly. He's just incredibly frustrated, and rightfully so. So the longer this thing drags out, the more I think he's going to look at other options. And the other part of this too, and other options being potentially staying and seeing what Barcelona, trying to listen to what Barcelona has to offer in terms of moving the club forward. The other part of this is that nobody except for Manchester City seems seriously interested. There were reports that Juventus did some asking. PSG doesn't seem all that intent on trying to make this come to fruition. Inter has basically just taken themselves out of the equation. So all of a sudden your spots are pretty limited because you're paying $100 million a year for this guy, essentially, in terms of salary, on top of the transfer fee. This is a complex thing. So we'll see what happens. By the time we talk on Tuesday, there could very well be a resolution in one way, shape, or form to this. Maybe not officially, but sort of unofficially in terms of whether he's staying or not. But this is changing by the moment, and Barcelona's gotten themselves back in this conversation, which doesn't shock me, but it is. I think it has more to do almost with the fact that Manchester City can't just sort of make this happen, and the fact that there's no free transfer. That you have to have Barcelona involved in this conversation because you've got to get out of that contract. He can't just do it for free like he was trying to at the beginning. And the fact that, like I said, Messi doesn't want to leave. It's just a question of can he compete for Champions Leagues at Barcelona. So the more conversation you have to have and the more things you got to figure out, the more opportunities Barcelona has to say, here's how we can get back into that Champions League conversation. Another team getting back into the Champions League conversation just bolstered their squad. Manchester United officially announcing Donny van de Beek from Ajax. This was rumored for a while, but it's actually happened. On the surface, in a vacuum, this is a terrific piece of business. He's worth more than they paid for him. They got a bargain deal. And, you saw what he was able to do when Ajax made that run in the Champions League last season. Well, technically 2 seasons ago now. He's a very good player. He's a fully established Dutch international. He was going to make a move to a big club. He's part of that Ajax train where guys perform at a high level for him and then they leave. That's just how this works. My question here, and one of the first things I thought of when they started talking and these links became public and they were you were talking United and Van de Beek, is I'm really curious to see how Ole Gunnar Solskjaer fits him into this team. Because theoretically, your best 3 midfielders, well, not theoretically, your best 3 midfielders are Van de Beek, Pogba, and Fernandes, who theoretically can play together in a midfield, specifically in a 4-2-3-1 that United has used sometimes. You put Fernandes in the number 10 role, and you put Pogba and Van de Beek as your deeper lying midfielders. Van de Beek is more of a 10 than a 6, but he's very versatile. It's one of the most appealing aspects about him. He can play in a more of a number 8 sort of box-to-box role like you would see in a 4-2-3-1. That's not the issue. The problem is, if you're going to go with those 3 midfielders and then some combination of your front 3, whether you're playing them in a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, whether that even matters. The point being, if you're going to go 3 midfielders and 3 attackers, you're Rashford, Martial, Greenwood. There is no cover for that back 4. None. Because you have 3 attack-minded midfielders. Fernandes is much more of your true traditional number 10, and Van de Beek is more in that vein as well. Again, he can play different roles, but these guys are all thinking scoring goals, assisting, creating chances, getting on the ball, making things happen. They're not thinking, how do I shield my back 4? And when you look at this United team, what is the biggest weakness we've seen? Specifically at center backs and to a certain extent left back. It's defense. And that's why you had a Nemanja Matic in there alongside Pogba to be that guy, to provide some protection. If Van de Beek comes in and takes his spot, you're taking a really, really large risk if you're Solskjaer. You're going to score a boatload of goals. But there comes a point where it doesn't matter how many goals you score. And look at LAFC. I mean, they put on a show last night, but there comes a point where it doesn't matter how good you are offensively if you can't buckle down and keep people from scoring on you when it matters. This team is absolutely loaded. The talent is there. Van de Beek, again, this is a good deal. But my question goes back to the same thing when we were talking Jadon Sancho when it was sort of made public that he was staying at Dortmund. Do United really need these guys? Whether it's Van de Beek or Sancho or both or whoever. is this actually going to make them better? It's just another attacking option, but they have a bunch of attacking options. And yeah, they could use some depth at midfield. He's going to obviously, theoretically, be here long term for the majority of his prime. You know, he's going to get better. He's still got room to grow and time to mature. But from a tactical standpoint, this is going to be very interesting. Maybe they find a way to just hold on to the ball enough and you get enough from Pogba that you can get by with those three playing in the midfield by themselves. But right now, your best 6 players in the systems that they've been using during their resurgence are all playing offense, not defense. So that's the question I have with Van de Beek. Moving to MLS, we got 2 things here. One player leaving, one player coming in. The player leaving is Pity Martinez from Atlanta United. It's not technically official yet, but the transfer's been agreed to. He's going to Al Nassr. And Atlanta's going to reportedly turn a profit in this deal, which is the most important thing. They spent, I think it was $14 million to bring him in. This was a massive investment by this team, and this is how their system works, much like Ajax. It's not through their academy, but they're going to invest in valuable young South American talent, have one of the better rosters and better squads in the league, and then when those guys show out and Europe comes calling, or in this case, the Middle East, they're going to sell them. They're going to sell them for higher money, make a profit off it, and then they're going to go get the next Pity Martinez. You saw with Miguel Almiron, that money went directly to Martinez, and now that money's going to go to whoever's next in this line. The risk, so they're not selling low on him per se. His time in Atlanta hasn't been great. You've had some good times, some good moments, some poor moments, some disappointment. They didn't live up to their potential as a team last year. But they're not selling because they have to. They're selling because they felt like this was too good of an offer to pass up. They were in a position of power and influence, or just generally in a good position here with this negotiation. They had the upper hand. But the downside to running an organization this way is that now you have to go find the next Pity Martinez. You got to replace him just like you had to replace Almiron, so you brought him in. And the difference between how Ajax does this and how Atlanta does this is that Ajax is, of course, well aware of what's happening in their academy. When you lose Donny van de Beek, you can identify, okay, maybe this guy's not quite ready yet. But, Dennis Bergkamp was telling people, including, ironically, Frank de Boer, Atlanta's former manager, look, working in the youth setup at Ajax, Donny van de Beek's going to be really good. That's the ability that Ajax has, is they can identify these guys. Manchester United knew Mason Greenwood was coming. If you miss on this transfer, whoever it's going to be, because theoretically you're bringing in another DP attacker at some point in the near future, whether it's this transfer window or the next transfer window sometime. You miss on that transfer, you're in trouble. Because we've seen what happens to Atlanta when Joseph Martinez isn't available. That's when you need this particular player, your second big-time DP, to step up. And now this is, at this moment in time, it's Ezequiel Barco's team, who also hasn't quite hit his stride in MLS, much like Martinez. Some good, some bad. We'll see where it goes from here, who the new manager is. But you don't have the luxury of being familiar with these guys you're bringing in. You just got to scout them and then throw them in there and hope it works. So that, Atlanta wants to be the team that South Americans look at and go, that's my route to Europe. I get to play in the United States, good salary, fantastic club culture, fan base, city. It's a cool club to be at. And then they've got the attention of Europe. They know that these guys coming through are going to move to that next level eventually. So you're building this pipeline. That's sort of what Atlanta's trying to do here. But from Atlanta's perspective, you've also got to make sure that you've got enough talent on the field to continue to be one of the best teams in this league, because that fan base is expecting a lot, and for good reason. They came in with a bang, and they've been one of the best teams in this league since day one. But now you've lost Almiron, Martino. You're on your third sort of big South American, or you could say fourth with Barco, but your third number 10 creative, guy who pulls the strings out of your offense. It's just the reality of the way that Atlanta operates. There's good and bad sides to it. But Pete Martinez is gone, and those players are always going to leave when there's a good offer on the table. Especially in a situation like this where, you get Joseph Martinez back at some point, but I don't think Atlanta is looking at this as a run to where they've got a really good shot at winning this championship and hoisting MLS Cup, which is kind of the difference to bring it to the Philadelphia Union real quick. And, for example, Brendan Aronson. The Union are looking at this thing going, this might be our best shot if we could hold this group together for the rest of the season and then McKenzie and Aronson leave. Atlanta's had better teams than this one, specifically when Almiron was there instead of Martinez. So it's not a loss. They did good to get this money back in return. You just sort of hit reset and you go try and find his replacement now. The other team that made a significant signing that I wanted to acknowledge and mention is Minnesota United. They brought in Emmanuel Reynoso from Boca Juniors, 24-year-old creative midfielder, designated player. The comparison I'm going to make, not in terms of talent, but in terms of what I see this transfer as, is what Lucas Zelarayan did for Columbus. They won again yesterday. They are one of the best teams in this league. They were not good last year. They were bad. But all of a sudden, you bring in Darlington Nagbe and you've got a string puller in Zelarayan with the talent that was building around your Giassi Zardes and Milton Valenzuela, and you go down the list. Columbus had some good players, but they just weren't quite enough. They needed that difference maker in the midfield to make everybody else better, and Zelarayan's been phenomenal for him. To me, that's what Reynoso does for Minnesota. You've got the roster's constructed a little differently, but you have that other, all-star caliber MLS career guy in Ike Opara, one of the best defenders in the league, just like Columbus has Darlington Nagbe, and now you need that difference maker at the DP midfielder position, if that's a thing, to take your team to the next level. Minnesota's been kind of building toward this moment, and that's when you look at this team, their strikers haven't really worked out in terms of the big ones that they've invested money in, but they're finding a way to score enough goals up there with Mason Toye and others. But the one thing they've been desperately lacking is somebody to create other than Kevin Molino and that superstar, one of the best players in the league, because it's very much been a collective effort in Minnesota. And that gets you into a spot where you're a top 4 team in the West. But you see it when you go up against Orlando and Portland and Seattle and LAFC and Atlanta. These teams that, specifically when you're talking about in Orlando, where Nani in that MLS's back tournament turned that game on its head in 5 minutes or whatever it was. Individual brilliance. That's what Minnesota is missing. That's what Reynoso can bring. So I really like this move. This is a statement of intent. This Minnesota team is for real. They're here to stay. They have a long-term plan. This was always something they were intending to do. They tried to get this over the line before. It just didn't happen. Then coronavirus struck, but they got their guy. And all of a sudden, with LAFC struggles, Seattle's been a little bit up and down. Kansas City's been good for the most part, but they don't exactly terrify you. Minnesota's right up there with everybody in the Western Conference. And so I'm really excited to see Rayoso. But if he is what they're expecting him to be, and at this point, you've got no reason to think that he's not going to come in and make that kind of difference, they are absolutely one of the best teams in this league. And I will continue to go to bat for Adrian Heath. I just don't think he got time in Orlando. And it's another one of those examples. When you don't provide a coach with the resources to build a competitive roster, or don't provide the coach with a competitive roster in any sport, the easiest sort of quote-unquote solution is to fire the coach, because that's the interchangeable part that you can say, hey, at least we're doing something to appease the fans. But it's not like the next coach comes in and makes things better. Look how long it has taken Orlando to actually figure out their roster. Minnesota came in and said, we're going to give Adrian Heath time. We understand that we are not coming in with the talent to compete right away. We're going to be bad. That's okay. Let's start figuring out who we want to keep and build to get that sort of next level of talent where you can make the playoffs, and then now we're ready to go be one of the best teams in this league. This is a turning point for Minnesota United. They've been phenomenal. He's doing a great job. And now he's getting the talent to play with. He will he will tell you, I've always known what I'm doing. It's just now we have the players to actually implement it and live up to our potential. So, is one of the other big teams in this league lose their number 10 in P.D. Martinez? Minnesota brings in a difference maker in that midfield creative role. Really, really like this. Keep your eye on the Loons as we get deeper into this season, as Rayoso gets his feet under him and starts making an impact in this league. When we come back, we're going to take our break right now. But on the other side, we're going to do our supporters corner for the week. It's a little bit different this time, though. We're going to be asking a friend of mine 20 questions about the upcoming Premier League season as we start sort of previewing, as it's coming here really soon. So 20 questions about the Premier League coming up in the supporters corner. You're watching Touchline Talk. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to Touchline Talk. As I said, it's time for our Supporters Corner this week. Joining me for an interview is FC Cincinnati intern, my friend Mike Ackley. Got to know Mike over the past couple years in a variety of sports media contexts. Mike's an Arsenal fan. He's obviously got connections in MLS now. But what we did is we just sort of went through 20 questions I had about the Premier League season. Everything from some predictions about who gets relegated to who wins the league, to other things such as, team and manager under the most pressure, transfer that Mike likes so far. Just sort of 20 overarching questions as we begin previewing this season that's starting so quickly. We did have a little bit of a internet connection issue briefly near the end, so apologize in advance for that. But we were back on track for the most important thing, the last question, which is, of course, who Mike thinks is going to win the Premier League this season. So without further ado, here's our Supporters Corner interview this week with Mike Ackley. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining me. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, yeah, no problem, Josh. No problem, Josh. I'm excited. Let's go.
All right, so let's start with Arsenal. You as an Arsenal supporter.
Mm-hmm.
Couple trophies here. I was talking on Tuesday. I feel like part of it for this club is you just got to win things and start building this revitalized team under Mikel Arteta. So where are you on Arsenal? How much weight do you put into the Community Shield? How optimistic are you with this new season starting right away on the back of, a very solid end to last season?
I didn't watch the Community Shield. I was working for a professional soccer team, so I couldn't get to watch it. I couldn't take anything from that. I take a lot from the FA Cup. I watched that very intently. We just look good. And I was seeing something the other day about how, other clubs, Man United and Chelsea, won FA Cups and then fire their managers. Well, my thinking is okay, if you win something as a group, you should go into that as a group together being like, hey, we can win as a group. Let's build from this. And I like winning trophies. I like winning things. So I'll take it. But I think we can build on it. Will we is the question.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am too. Is I think there's a lot of positivity and reason to be optimistic, but I'm not quite sold that it's going to translate into an extended, 38 game season here in the Premier League.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. This is disjointed. This season is going to be more disjointed than last season, I think. Other teams have gotten stronger. There's going to be a lot of depends on a lot of different things. Some are with Arsenal, some are out of Arsenal's hands.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're here today to talk sort of everything Premier League as we get ready for the new season to kick off, and we're going to do 20 questions in honor of the 20 teams in the league. So are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be. Just to preface this, I actually know nothing about the sport of soccer, whatsoever. Even though I've been following it for the past 5 years, I actually know nothing. So this should be interesting. Let's go.
All right. Question number 1. What team do you think should feel the best coming into the season? Not necessarily about their hopes of winning a title or anything, but just most optimistic based on any combination of recent form, transfers, any kind of developments. Just who do you think is sort of looking at this most optimistically heading into the new campaign?
I would say it's Chelsea. They've signed a lot. They're all attacking players. They finished really well last year. I saw them manhandle Man City on that. I think it was a Wednesday afternoon. That's off the pitch. And honestly, on the pitch, I would say Arsenal again. They ended last year, beat City, Liverpool, and Chelsea to end the year. They just beat Liverpool. Arsenal has a tough October, first 6 out of 8 games, but Arsenal and Chelsea definitely.
That would be probably the two teams I would pick as well. The other team I would throw in there is Spurs, which I'm sure you don't want to hear.
No, Spurs, something's off with Spurs. I don't know what it is. They don't feel good. I don't know what – I mean, I don't like Spurs, but even people I know who do like Spurs, they're looking at this when is Mourinho, when is he going to flop, basically. So I don't know about Spurs.
Yeah, and I think I think I'm very much in the minority on this, but I look at that team fully healthy. I really like what they've got. Okay, so on the flip side, question number 2. What team do you think should be most concerned or feeling the worst heading into this season?
Oh, Leicester. They choked down the Sheds. Everyone wanted them to be in the Champions League because it was something new. But then they just flopped. And now they're in the Europa League. I think they're going to struggle. I have them finishing 10th in a table that I've
Wow.
predicted. Yeah, they're going to fall. 10th isn't bad for, 10 years ago if you told people, oh, Leicester, you're going to finish
Right.
10th in the Premier League. Oh, that's great. I think Leicester's going to struggle. And I would just say Everton because I think it's gotten to the point everyone's just like, what is Everton? What is an Everton? We're just kind of here. We have the potential to be good, but we haven't even shown any signs of being competitive. So Leicester is 1, Everton's 2.
So you don't put – how much stock then do you put into what happened before the restart and before Leicester lost both of those fullbacks? Because to me that's – and James Maddison too. Because now you've got a replacement for Chilwell coming. It sounds like that's going to be official soon. Once you get Pereira back, that's much more like the team that was in second place for most of the season.
I think even with that, I mean, I don't know. That might help, but I think that collective memory of like, oh, we had this chance and we should be playing in Champions League, but we're in the Europa League. We got to go to Bulgaria and play in front of an empty stadium or something like that. I think that is just failing to qualify and then having to start. Failing to qualify and then like a month later having to start. I think it's not going to go well for Leicester.
Yeah, that's a valid point, right? You got to put that behind you really quickly. Question 3. Your favorite move by a Premier League team of this window so far?
I would say technically of this window when they signed the guy, I would say Ziyech.
Okay.
I remember watching him for Ajax in
Yep.
their 18-19 run at the semifinals. Thought he was really good. Yeah, and then I mean, obviously, if Messi goes to City, that'd be the best one. But I think, Ziyech to Chelsea.
And then question number 4. It might be the same answer, but what new player are you most excited about, excited to watch?
Excited to watch? Oof. Leeds just signed a striker, I think,
Yep.
from either Villarreal or Valencia. One
Yep.
of those guys.
Rodrigo. Yep. Spain's number 9.
Rodrigo. Yeah, I think that you're playing the Leeds. Like they went out and got someone from a decent side. I think him in the Premier League, him Bielsa's system. I actually know nothing about Bielsa, so I'm just going off of what I've heard. I think that Rodrigo at Leeds could be a good one.
That's my answer too. I like your thinking there. All right. Question 5. Team that you are highest on or most optimistic about that you think is going to overachieve or exceed expectations?
If there was not coronavirus and, Leeds could fill their stadium, I would say that, but they can't as of right now. I don't think they're going to be able to until January or February. Exceed expectations? Probably. I mean, I don't really think anyone's really going to succeed at their expectations. I mean, they're all going to finish right where they are. Like, I don't have anyone, randomly getting a European spot. It's the teams who have been getting European spots. So I don't really see anyone exceeding their expectations. I'm going to go out.
Okay.
No one's going to succeed. They're all going to go status quo.
All right. And then number 6, the team that you're lowest on and you think is going to struggle the most.
I'm going to say West Ham. I don't know why. I just get this, West Ham is just an L of a club. It's so
they got a lot of issues.
Yeah, they moved from an iconic stadium into this plastic place that looks terrible on TV. They got David Moyes. What are you doing? But I do have them staying up.
Okay.
Yeah, West Ham for some odd reason. I just got a bad feeling about them.
Number 7, how many teams do you think can genuinely contend for the title, or how many teams do you think are looking at this saying we have a real chance to win this?
3. City, Chelsea, Liverpool.
Okay, so not United.
Yeah. No, not Man United. There's just a bad vibe. Man United, like it's just bad vibes. Cool, they got into the Champions League and they got Bruno Fernandes, but like that was just a bad vibe. Man United, but Chelsea, City, Liverpool are going to go for it. Liverpool, I think they can go for it. I don't know if they will. They might be dead tired going on a Champions League run and then winning the Premier League back-to-back seasons. City's going to want to. They got horse raced with the title, and then they got embarrassed in the Champions League. They also lost to Arsenal in the FA Cup. Like, what are you doing? Come on, you losing to Arsenal? Like, what are you doing? They could have easily won all 4 trophies they had to win, but they always ended up with the League Cup.
Yep.
So I think City is going to go for it.
All right, number 8. How many teams do you think are genuinely in the Champions League top 4 race that feel like they have a shot of qualifying for the Champions League?
I would say 7. Wolves, Spurs, Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, City.
Okay, so big 6 and Wolves.
Yeah.
All right. Number 9. Which of the promoted teams, newly promoted teams, do you think is going to be most successful?
Oh, Leeds. Leeds, definitely. There's going to instill a fear because people are going to think, oh, Leeds is back. Got Bielsa. They know what they're doing. The players are going to be up for it because, it's the return of the team for the first time in, I think, 16 years. I think it's going to be Leeds. I would, as I said earlier, if they could have full stadiums starting next week when the league kicks off, I would definitely say Leeds. But now I'm just saying, okay, it's going to be Leeds. I don't see West Brom or Fulham doing anything.
I'm right there with you. And, yeah, it's one of the saddest things about this whole reality is that you don't get a packed Ellen Road for each return. It's a shame. Yeah. Number 10, manager under the most pressure right away.
Most pressure right away? Oh, it's Mourinho. Just because of the documentary. That's it. They came out with the documentary of him at Spurs. Now, from what I'm not going to pay Amazon to watch it, but what I've heard, and now it doesn't paint Mourinho in the greatest light, but it's still Mourinho on a documentary. And people are going to scrutinize that and take it into his managerial career. Also, they ended really bad towards the end of the season. Like, they're in the Europa League. They're going to have to play, 10 games in September. I would definitely say Jose Mourinho.
Number 11, the team under the most pressure.
The team under the most pressure is Liverpool. How can you defend, the greatest season ever? One of the greatest seasons ever. It's definitely Liverpool.
Interesting. Okay. I would say Manchester City for the reasons you articulated earlier, that it was incredibly disappointing on just about every front last year. And if you can't find a way to make a Champions League semifinal, at least to compete for this title, you got to start asking real questions. But that all changes it changes and is even more pressure if Messi comes. So.
Oh, yeah, entirely.
Number 13. Sorry. 12. Biggest surprise. If I had to say something weird is going to happen, what is it?
Ooh, something weird is going to happen. It would probably be one of the teams of Everton, Sheffield, or Leicester by halfway midpoint of the season. One of those teams could be in the relegation battle. I don't know why. I know Sheffield needs their home crowd. I don't know. They ended really badly. I think they won one game after the restart, something like that, 1 or 2 games. They need that home crowd. Well, if they can't get a full Bramall Lane, that's going to struggle. And then Everton, they don't know what they are. Leicester, as I said earlier, they got some mental things to figure out. So one of those 3 could very well be in the relegation on Boxing Day.
13. What team do you think will be most improved this season?
Most improved? Probably Arsenal, honestly. You got the players who were maligned, rightfully so. They stepped up after the lockdown. And, it hasn't been it's only been a month. They're going to still be in that shape. I'm going to say Arsenal. Now, does that mean we're going to, challenge for the title? No. Are we probably going to, screw something up? Of course we are. But I think individual players are going to step up in various different places for Arsenal.
I would agree. That was one of the first names that came to mind for this question for me. I think it's going to be Arsenal and Spurs are both going to be vastly improved. So North London's going to have a much better campaign this time around. Number 14, the game slash matchup you're most excited about. If you could only watch one game this season, what would it be?
I mean, okay, biased take. The Spurs at Arsenal matches the last 2 years have been wildly entertaining. There was the 4-2 comeback. There was 2-2 draw last year. Obviously, Arsenal or Spurs at Arsenal. That's my number one, but I'm biased. As a neutral, probably City Liverpool. Those games have been pretty entertaining. Either at the Etihad or Anfield. Probably one of those two. That's a basic pick. I would also say if sometime in second half of the season when either Ellen Road or Old Trafford are full, Leeds and Man United, because that was a battle in the 70s and 80s, and it has this lore about it. But only if those stadiums are packed out and there's no such thing as social distancing anymore.
I would throw
only if that happens.
And I would throw the Manchester Derby into that category too. Of if United is really challenging, that could be fun between those two teams as well. Yeah, I like those picks. Number 15. What is the storyline or biggest thing that's most interesting to you about this season and just sort of the way it's setting up?
I mean, I'm going to state an obvious thing. When can fans actually go back to games? I'm not talking like, oh, they spread everyone out. There's only like 4,500. No, I'm talking about packed stadiums. That like first weekend where there's packed stadiums, or there's first couple games, there's packed stadiums. That's actually going to feel real. Now, I know that's like the depressing thing. We probably should focus on the pitch stuff. But, like, come on. Like, it's obvious when you're watching a game, having no fans there stinks. I've watched in person, I've watched a soccer game at a stadium that has no fans. It's awful. Fans need to get back in the stadiums. It's not sports until fans are entirely back.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually really like that. And it's going to, like you said, it might play a role in how this thing turns out, too, if it's at the midway point of the season or something. All right, number 16. This is more of a yes or no question, but by the time the season starts or by the time the transfer window closes, is Lionel Messi reunited with Pep Guardiola at Manchester City?
Yes. Screw it. Get him in the Premier League. It'd be awesome to have him for 2 or 3 years before he goes and plays at Yankee Stadium or whatever the deal is. That'd be awesome if he was back. Just selfishly, let's get him back. Let's get him to the Premier League. He's never played here. Let's get him to the Premier.
Number 17. How many of the big six clubs finish in the top six at the end of the season?
All six.
Yeah. I feel like that's the rational thing to do every year. And then somehow it gets messed up.
It screws up.
But this is the first year where I really feel like you can make a case for all six teams that they are as complete as they have been in a while and that really look like the best six teams in the league.
Yeah. Squad-wise, yes. Some of the other things, like the mental, just being in that goofy headspace. Besides that, on the field, yes, I agree with you.
Number 18. Who gets relegated?
Oh, I have Fulham, Brighton, and Southampton.
You have Brighton.
I do have. I just don't care. Like Brighton, like they don't really have a rivalry. Okay, Palace and Brighton. Like I don't really care. Fulham, you're cool, but you're just Fulham. And Southampton, just go down. Like you're just boring. Go down.
I gotta say, I really like what Brighton has done in this transfer window in terms of sort of retooling and bolstering that squad. I'm kind of high on Brighton at the moment.
No, Brighton. And if I'm being honest, 14 through 20th, they all have a place. Like I got Villa, Palace, West Brom, West Ham, Fulham, Brighton, Southampton. Any of those teams can go down.
I think it's going to look a lot like last year where it's just kind of a mess down there.
Yeah.
All right, number 19. We're going to – question 20, I'll spoil it, is who wins the league. But before we get to that, without actually saying who your winner is, it's sort of a two-part question, but how close does that winner come to 100 points? How far is the gap between first and second? Do we have a real title race, or is it going to look more like last season?
I think we are going to have a real title race. As I said, there's 3 teams that are definitely going to go for it. They all have their own problems, but there are 3 teams definitely going to go for it. One of those teams, whatever one it is probably going to drop off. They're going to probably focus on something else. I think it's definitely 3 teams can go for the title. I hope we have a title race, like an actual title race. I remember a couple years ago, City and Liverpool, I think it was, what was that, 18, 19? Like, it was a title race, but City was like a point ahead, and like they weren't going to lose, and everyone could see it. But then everyone got really excited. Oh, there's a title race. But I'm like, guys, no, there's not. City's not going to slip up. I want an actual title race where it's flip-flopping back and forth.
And then finally, number 20, Mike, who wins the league?
City. I think it's City. Liverpool, you won your title. They're going to live off that. Live off that Champions League title. It's going to be City.
I'm gonna reserve my prediction for a later time. But the one thing I will say,
boo.
I'll make it before the season starts. Don't.
Okay, fair enough.
But one of the things I will say is that I think it's one of the most underappreciated aspects of sport is how difficult it is to continue to defend titles, and how much motivation you get from a season like City had, where it was just so disappointing and nothing seemed to go well, and the amount of, like you said, the amount of mental effort and energy it takes to go put in those performances if you're Liverpool again with a revitalized City that might have Lionel Messi. I continue to believe that's one of the most underappreciated things that we don't pay attention to is there's just an extra level of motivation, I feel like, and an extra level you can get to when you're coming off such a disappointing season, as opposed to trying to go repeat after you just ended that title drought if you're Liverpool.
And I will say about the mental aspect of being drained, this is just my thing. Like, the stuff that happened after COVID, that didn't really feel, this is me as a fan, that didn't really feel like big time. It felt so small, and it may have affected the players. But maybe that everyone's like, well, we didn't really, like, cool, we didn't win anything. But, like, you can always use the excuse of, like, oh, the coronavirus happened, none of the trophies really matter. So maybe they aren't mentally drained. Now, physically, probably, and they might also be mentally drained too, because they're like, this sucks. Like, this is not fun to play in front of no one.
Yeah, and Jurgen Klopp said it was the most difficult, and of course Jurgen Klopp's going to be biased because his team won it, but he said even before they lifted the trophy, it's the most difficult title to win of all time because of the break and the way you got to get back up and find motivation without fans and all of that stuff. So I think it goes both ways in a sense.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Mike,
for
answering our 20 questions and taking the time. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Oh, I want to make a prediction. I also want you to make a prediction too, putting you on the spot. Your teams that get promoted this year in the championship.
Oh, goodness. Do you want to go first or do you want me to?
I'll go first because I have 2 of these are actual teams I think can come up. Swansea and Nottingham Forest. They just missed out last year. Forest needs to get back. So they're one like Leeds and Villa.
Yep, right.
And
deserve to be the
Prem. And then for just craps and giggles, let's get Millwall to the Prem. Let's get Millwall to the Prem. You know, the lunacy, very borderline racism, but let's get them in the Prem. Let's mix these waters up. Millwall.
Millwall is definitely an interesting choice there. Yeah. I agree with you that Swansea's headed in the right direction. I really want Brentford to come up and get rewarded for it. And the fact that they might lose some of those attacking players, but they, Leeds chose to go a different direction other than Ollie Watkins. I really like that trio up front. So I'll say Brentford, and I'm also with you on Nottingham Forest. I would really like to see that. So those will be my 3.
Yeah. I knocked the Brentford one because they left their iconic stadium for a plastic building. But, yeah, I'll go with Brentford on that one.
Awesome. Really appreciate this. Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
And thanks again to Mike for coming on. Really enjoyed that conversation. Always gotta love 20 questions. Fun to do it. Premier League. style here on Touchline Talk. We're going to take our second break. When we come back, a rather unique edition of What's Next, because we're going to talk Nations League. We have real, legit international competition starting this afternoon. It's phenomenal. We're going to go through everything you need to know about all of these European contests coming up this weekend. You're watching Touchline Talk on 110 Sports. Welcome back to Touchline Talk. As always, we're going to look at what's next here, focusing specifically on the Nations League. Now, there are 400,000 games going on because you got the Group A and the Group B and the Group C. We'll go focus primarily or exclusively on Group A pretty much here, just because these are the best teams, these are the most interesting matchups, these are the games that we want to talk about and pay attention to. So, starting this afternoon, we got a really good one right away. Germany versus Spain. Germany's going to be without their Bayern starters, at least for the beginning of the Nations League. Joachim Löw didn't call them in, but you have your Nicolas Sulas and Leroy Sané's to represent Bayern. You've got Timo Werner, Kai Havertz are both in this team. This is very much a new look, sort of experimental German side, that if they were playing high stakes and Bayern hadn't just finished a race to complete the Bundesliga and Champions League, your Thomas Müllers and you go down the list, Joshua Kimmich would all be in this team. But you're going to see this team. These aren't exactly full-strength squads for a variety of reasons. But this is still a very interesting Germany team, a Germany team that I'm excited to watch. And it's a lot of these younger guys that are going to be the face of Germany when we get to a next World Cup, get to the European Championships, assuming they go as planned next summer. It's your Kai Havertz, your Timo Werners, etc. On the Spain side, also a very young team, particularly in attack. Adama Traore of Wolves was supposed to be there, but he tested positive for COVID, so he is removed from the squad. But again, this is an interesting team. This is an opportunity to watch new lead striker Rodrigo. He's going to lead the line for Spain here. Your Marco Asensio's. These are still good squads, even if they're not completely at full strength and exactly what you're hoping for or would expect in a World Cup or something. I mean, at the end of the day, these are glorified friendlies. There is a competitive aspect to them, but this isn't a big time tournament. But I like the balance here of the Nations League because it gives you something to play for in a competition to try and win. So these are about as full strength as you're going to get in terms of teams now with just the weird schedule and COVID and everything going on. Second game is Ukraine-Switzerland. Again, these are the Group A games, so the highest level of this competition. For Ukraine, a couple names to know. Ruslan Molinovsky from Atalanta, who is sort of their difference maker off the bench, who comes in as a sub almost every game. And Andrei Yarmolenko from West Ham, formerly Borussia Dortmund, are sort of two of the higher profile names. Again, a lot of domestic talents from the Ukrainian league. For Switzerland, as always, it's a Bundesliga heavy side. They've got most of their regulars in there. It's a lot of upper tier German teams that aren't Bayern and Dortmund. It's your Mönchengladbachs and such that make up a large part of this Swiss contingent. But sorry about that. It's a Swiss team that is always very solid and tough to play against. Then we go to Friday, Netherlands, Poland. Another interesting matchup here. This is a Netherlands team that is continuing to rise and get back to where they are supposed to be, which is among the best teams in the world. So they made a really good run in this tournament last year. It's just, can they put this together again? Can they compete in the Euros next year? They just were so poor for a stretch there, but they're absolutely filled with young talent, and you've got one of the best players in the world in Virgil van Dijk. For Poland, of course, everything starts with Robert Lewandowski. He's not in this team right now. Again, trying to get him some rest and just acknowledge the fact that he finished his season, 2 weeks ago, and try and give him some kind of break. One of his replacements, though, is New England Revolution striker Adam Buska. So you're replacing, your theoretical Ballon d'Or winner with Bruce Arena's guy. But, hey, it's a great opportunity for Buska. Buska has proven himself on the European stage and is a member of this Polish national team. So there's an interesting name to watch out for there. Then we got Italy, Bosnia-Herzegovina. This is, again, your prototypical Italian team with a lot of Serie A guys. Your Lorenzo Insignes, Ciro Immobiles. One of the interesting names in here I wanted to mention, Moise Kean is in as one of the attackers for this team. Hasn't really gotten things to go in the Premier League yet, but started to pour some goals in near the end of last season. Again, he is one of the bright young stars of Italian soccer and trying to cement himself in this team moving forward, so that's a name I wanted to recognize there. Saturday, very busy day. Major League Soccer games, the return of the NWSL, which I don't want to completely ignore, is also this weekend. Rachel Daly, the hero of the Challenge Cup, is going on loan to West Ham for the end of 2020, so a short-term thing, but she won't be there for Houston. I want to focus on the Nations League, but I want to acknowledge those things, and we'll talk about a couple MLS games in particular here in a minute. But Saturday, there are too many Nations League games that I wanted to mention and really keep with this theme. Starting with England-Iceland, of course, this game has history after what happened when these two teams played in the Euros. This is a very, very interesting England squad. It's most of the guys you would expect, but you also have some new faces in there that are not usually part of this team. And of course, Harry Maguire is now out. But you're looking at guys like Calvin Phillips from Leeds United, who I maintain is, until Rodrigo came, and Robin Koch in defense, the German who will also be part of that Germany team. Calvin Phillips was the only guy on that squad that you looked at and said, he is going to get to the Premier League one way or another. To me, he is their most promising prospect, their most valuable piece. And so, he's getting his England call-up, gets to play with the big boys. Congratulations to him. Ainsley Maitland-Niles came off of a great performance in the Community Shield. He's in. Mason Greenwood's in, which is not a surprise considering what he did at the end of last season. And Jack Grealish finally gets his England call-up as well. In the last couple days here, they've been tinkering with the squad. Guys have been coming in and out. So this is very much your typical England squad with a lot of your regulars in there. But there are also some other pieces coming in that I'm very excited to see that provide something a little bit different. Then you've got Denmark, Belgium. Of course, Belgium is just absolutely stacked all the time. Denmark also a very solid team. Croatia, Portugal, same idea. You've got, this Croatia proved in the World Cup just how good they can be. Portugal won a Euro, won this competition. They are picking up trophies against other European teams right now. And then the other game on Saturday is Sweden, France. Again, another very good Sweden team. These are all the teams that make World Cups that are difficult to play against. And pretty much a typical French squad, not quite as strong as normal. But I do want to make a point here. For as much as we talk about, how much France has an attack where Alexander Lacazette can't get into the team, and midfield where you've got Pogba and N'Golo Kante, and and of course you've got Mbappe, all this talent going forward. Here are the center backs that have been called up for these Nation League games. Kimpembe, Langley, Upamecano, and Varane. That's PSG's best defender, Barcelona's best defender, Real Madrid's arguably best defender, at least most consistent performer in the defense, and a guy who could very easily be coming to Manchester United soon, who was spectacular for Leipzig. They are really deep and exceptionally gifted at the back, too. This is not just a team that scores a bunch of goals. They are so well balanced. That's why they were able to win the World Cup. So I just wanted to acknowledge how good this center back situation is for France. And then we move to Sunday. Sunday, we're now into the second stage of this thing, so we're not going to go through all of these teams again. I sort of gave you the rundown already. But Spain, Ukraine, Switzerland, Germany. That Switzerland-Germany game is the more interesting one to me. Switzerland is always just difficult to deal with and can beat anybody on their day. Here are the two MLS games I just would be remiss not to talk about because they're such big rivalries, and you're getting these rivalry games more consistently because these teams are all playing regionally, and that's pretty much the whole point of rivalries. So, you get a lot of Columbus, Cincinnati's, and games like this. Seattle plays Portland again. Seattle was scoring goals in bunches, gave up a late equalizer in their last game, but they've come back from a very disappointing MLS is Back tournament very strong. Portland feels hard done after they didn't get that goal to stay that would have given them a draw against the Galaxy. I think it was a good goal. I don't know what was going on. Jeremy Bobasi has a right to be frustrated. Giovanni Savarese has a right to be frustrated. But it is what it is. The Galaxy did go on and win that game. They're playing fantastic right now. And doing what they need to do to make this a conversation and get back into the playoff race. And as I alluded to earlier, LAFC just thumped the San Jose Earthquakes. Again, it was a good matchup for them. I talked about that on Tuesday. But it's still very good to see that kind of production and that kind of performance after what's been an incredibly rough patch for this team. Now it's time they got to beat the Galaxy again. The Galaxy have the momentum here. If you want to assert your dominance in LA, this is a game that you're not going to beat them every single time. But to me, this is a game that LAFC have to control and put their foot down and say, we are still the best team in this city. Seattle-Portland, it's just always one of the best games in this league. And Portland's going to try and make sure that Seattle doesn't blitz them again because Seattle's been blitzing teams lately. So lots of really good games to talk about there. My apologies. And then finally, Monday, we've got the sort of second set of part 2 of these Nation League games. Netherlands, Italy is absolutely the headliner. Two teams trying to get back to prominence and get back to being two of the best teams in Europe that have been really disappointing in these last couple cycles. And you got Bosnia-Herzegovina, Poland, a game that you want to pick up 3 points in if you're going to try and compete and get out of the group stage of this thing and make a deep run, because you got some really, really good teams. Europe is just loaded, which makes this kind of competition fun. That's all we got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, check out Chris Brown's show, Around the Bases, Josh's show, The J-Mole Show, all of our content at 110sportsmedia.com. Sign up for the newsletter. But that is all for Touchline Talk today. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you Tuesday.